Warahmatullah. Today we begin another day of mutual, frank, casual discussion. But before that, let me tell you that I have already started receiving complaints that when you speak in Urdu, you have it translated into English. What is the fault or the, as they say, kusur kya hai, huh? Of the Urdu speaking, that when you speak in English, no translation is made available in Urdu. So I think you better see to it that in future there is some English to Urdu translation arrangement also is made, because there's it's a large number of people in Pakistan as well as also in Germany who have come from a background where there is hardly any English spoken or understood. So, for their sake, I think it would be better to make some arrangements, right?
So now the ball is on the other foot.
Yes, that's right. Okay, shall we?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Saeed Ahmed Jones, and inshallah we will be having mulaqat with Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmed, Khalifatul Masih IV. With us also today is my colleague Mr. Mustafa Clark, who is from Birmingham and who is the regional emir for the Midland region of England. Also with us today in the studio, there are two dedicated young men who have been given the responsibility for security. They are Master Ali Walker, aged 12, and Master Umar Walker, aged 9. Please don't be deceived by their age or their size.
Or the word master either. Because in Pakistan and India, etc., they don't understand the word master as applied to the child. As against Mr., when you speak of a young boy, in England, of course, you say masters, Mr. So-and-so. But there, the master means a school teacher, or sometimes a tailor. So these are the commonly understood meaning of master in the subcontinent. So that is why I said also that should be corrected.
Yes.
And pointed out that master in the sense of young boys, sons of Mr. So-and-so. That's right, yes.
Thank
right? Mr. Walker, huh?
That's right,
That's
yes.
right, yes.
Please don't be deceived by their age or their size, as they're both double black belt in origami,
Mashallah.
which is the deadly art of paper folding.
That's right.
I would like to ask our viewers that if you have any questions that you would like us to ask Huzur on your behalf, if you could please telephone us now, and the telephone number is 081 870 0922. That's 081 870 0922. There is someone there now waiting for your call.
Right. In the meantime, you have a question, haven't you? Yes. It's all right. If you take it from the other side, that would be easier.
Today is Palm Sunday, which is the beginning of the Christian celebration of Easter.
That's right. Has it already started?
Yes, today's Palm Sunday. You'll find in the towns and in the cities of the Christian world, many people
But the holidays begin after a few days, don't they?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, it's mainly
But officially, it is declared Christmas now.
Easter.
Easter, I'm sorry, Easter. Yes, that's right. Yes.
Well, mainly, my question is that Easter marks the beginning of the Christian festival of the trial, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus and his eventual ascension into heaven. But can you tell me why Muslims also believe that Jesus ascended to heaven?
Well, this question, although has taken a different deviation, should have been addressed right from the beginning as to the validity of this claim that Easter has anything to do with Jesus' birth or his so-called ascension, or has any right for the Christian era or year to begin on such dates. because according to my study and most Christian scholars of today agree with this. Christmas has no religious roots in Christianity. I'm sorry, I'm against, sorry. Christmas is so often used that automatically, this is my fault. I speak of Christmas instead. But I mean Easter. And here, if I make the mistake again, please correct me. Easter is it we are speaking about. Easter it is we are speaking about, okay? So Easter was a pagan festival handed down to the people of Judea, Palestine, etc., from the times immemorial. And it is the same festival, in fact, which under different guises is celebrated all over the world because this is the time when the spring harvests are ready to be reaped. So in Punjabi we say Dranti lag gayi. When the first people reach the crops and begin to reap it, that is the day of Easter, in fact. And the celebration is sort of thanksgiving to God for the wonderful crop of the spring, which started coming home, and God took care. I mean, this is the spirit underneath. That God took care of all the crops until they ripened and until they reached home safely, etc. So they celebrate this in the Punjab as Basant, in India also as Basant. And Basant has this relationship, although it's a Hindu festival, but also this has a relationship to this spring crops. And elsewhere in the world also we understand. But the Christian scholars of today who know the subject are all united in this belief that this is not a celebration of Christian origin. As far as the birth of Jesus Christ is concerned, it has absolutely no relationship with it. Because his birth took place in the autumn rather than the spring, at a time when the date palm trees were ready with their fruits to shed. And there is other evidence also growing that the Christmas, which is related to the birth of Jesus, is also wrong. It has no roots whatsoever in Christianity. So neither Easter nor Christmas are Christian in their true nature. They are festivals of a different type, festivals of the pagans, or let's say human festivals, not pagan, because they are related to nature, to periods of crops ripening. So they are the festivals. And in the case of Christmas, it was the festival of the sun god, which was being celebrated in those days by the Roman concept of deity, the Roman people, in accordance with their concept of deities. They also believed in a sort of trinity. And the sun god played the most central role in that.
That was Sol Invictus, wasn't
That's
it?
Solvictus, that's right. So that is the reason why it is suggested that in the Council of Nicaea, what was the name of the Roman emperor?
Constantine.
Oh, Constantine. He was a believer in that sun god. And that is why he held that council in a town which was specifically related to the sun god having some relation with that area, or some deity having been born there. So it is established that it was because of that Roman tradition that Christ also got in some way related to the sun god, and the celebration also has that connotation in it. Now coming to the question which you raised based on this. Would you kindly repeat it?
I'd like to know that Christians.
Why Muslims believe
That's
in
right.
the ascension of Jesus Christ?
How have they come to
Okay.
believe in that?
First of all, again, let me point out that even Christians have no right to believe in any ascension, because those verses of ascension, of those verses which refer somehow to ascension, are from Luke, last chapter 12, last 12 verses. Mark, also Mark, both. Mark and Luke, both are mentioned to have spoken of ascension. And it is now established after full investigations by Christian scholars that those last 12 verses, are they in Mark or in Luke?
Mark.
In Mark. But also in Luke there is a reference which I don't exactly remember. But the Mark, I'm positive, the last verses which allude to, which refer to Jesus' ascension, are proved to be spurious, finally and absolutely. So what right have they got to believe in ascension anyway? So the ascension idea of Jesus Christ found its way into the Muslim beliefs from Christian stories, I believe. And what reason they had to accept those stories lay in the mention in a hadith or many hadith books, many traditions by Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that Jesus, son of Mary, would descend in the latter days. So these two ideas got mended into one. They received these stories from the Christian world that Jesus was seen ascending to heaven. So the concept of ascent was already there. But there was no mention of Jesus' ascent either in the Quran or in any tradition. But they found mention of this, of the descent of Jesus from the heavens in Hadith. Now, the word descent is used, which is the meaning of nazala, or he made him to descend, anzala. And I have already spoken at length on this. The word nuzul, when referred to animals and human beings, and when God is the one who causes the nuzul, then without fail, the reference is to a special blessing related to these things, never a bodily descent. So they had no right to believe in the descent as literal descent either. And to base on that concept of descent, the idea of ascent is very far-fetched.
To assume that because there was a descent is mentioned, there must have been an ascent.
That's right.
Yes.
Now, the Holy Prophet never mentioned any ascent. That's the interesting part. He repeatedly speaks of descent, but never ascent. But descent, when we say descent, it should not be understood in the connotation as it is understood by the Christians in application to Jesus Christ. Because descent is a term of the Holy Quran which strictly applies to such things as have very special benefit for the mankind. So the same word nuzul has been used in the Quran in application to the what would you say translate as an'am, cattle of all form, and sheep, etc. Does the word cattle include sheep in English? That is why I hesitated.
I wouldn't say so.
It doesn't say.
No.
So there is not a single word as a translation for anam. Anam applies to those quadruped who give milk and whose meat is also eaten and consumed. So they include sheep up to the camels. They are anam. According to the Holy Quran, God made them descend. Then there is iron. You know iron, of
Yes.
course, is ore, iron ore.
Yes. Mm.
The Holy Quran clearly mentions it that we caused the iron to descend. Then, of course, among the prophets, there is the Holy Prophet of Islam himself. The Holy Quran uses exactly the same word of descent in application to Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Of all the prophets, he is the one prophet who is chosen to be, uh, whose advent is chosen to be described with the word descent. No other prophet has been mentioned as descending except he. The Quran descended, the books descend. Now, of all the books, which are the best, which are most beneficent and most, uh, useful for the mankind? Divine books, obviously. So, divine books are mentioned to have descended. And out of all things, of all the minerals, etc., and the metals, which one is the most useful for the mankind?
So it's iron.
Iron, obviously.
Yes.
So iron is mentioned to have descended. And then again, out of all the animals which have served the cause of humanity far more than others, cattle
Mm.
and sheep and goats and camels and all these things. And they are the ones among all the animals who have been singled out to have spoken of as having descended. So the meaning becomes very clear and obvious and more obvious. Then you come to all the prophets. As Muslims, of course, we have no hesitation to say that all the prophets who all came for the benefit of mankind, the one who excelled in this, who was the most beneficent for the mankind, was Holy Prophet of Islam. So in the Quran, there is no mention of Jesus descending. Only one person, one prophet of Allah is mentioned to have descended, and that is the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So these Muslims who believe in the ascent of Jesus Christ, they have absolutely no reason, no ground to believe, because as I've told you, their argumentation is based on the word descent. And I have already exposed this word.
Yes.
Descent means this. And the Quran does not mention Jesus Christ to have descended. The Holy Prophet is mentioned. So when there is no ascent mentioned in the Quran, no ascent mentioned in the Hadith, no descent regarding Jesus Christ is mentioned in the Quran, then the meaning of the Hadith would be understood in the light of the Quranic terminology, not in the light of any other terminology. And that is simply this, that in the latter days, when Jesus comes again, in whatever form he comes, he would have, uh, he would serve the most useful purpose for rehabilitating moral values and divine values in the world. Right? So what has it got to do with Easter?
Not very much.
Not very much. But one thing I tell you, one thing I remembered which surprises me about the Jews as well as Christians, that there was, of course, the concept of baptism present in all religions. As far as I have studied, in every religion there is this sort of concept of baptism. But why did the Jews wait until the Easter time for those who had got converted to Judaism to be baptized? They kept them waiting, and this practice started sometimes later in their history. I think about 200 to 300 years before Christ. But Prior to that, I don't remember having read this mentioned. But this is fact. What I'm telling you, that although in the beginning this baptism was meted out to the person the moment he accepted Judaism. Later on, they would not give baptism to such a person until the time of Easter. And at the time of Easter, this service was done. In Christianity, although Jesus Christ himself was baptized by John the Baptist, but this practice ultimately was, I think, declared non-Christian by Paul and his followers. Although I have read Paul having mentioned baptism, but in a different way. The concept of baptism, which we find in Judaism, has not been followed entirely. That is what I mean. A deviation was done, and because Paul wanted Christianity to be completely severed from its roots and old stem, so instead of immersing the body in water or giving the person a bath, what he did was sprinkling of water was substituted for this baptism. And yet it is surprising that all the rest of the Judaism were rejected but baptism. But the way Jesus was baptized, that is what I'm pointing out. He was immersed in water. And this reads sense because baptism means cleansing of body as well as that of soul.
Yes.
And as such, you can't sprinkle water and cleanse the body. So the Jewish practice had some reason and some sound reason for that matter of immersing people, and this is why John the Baptist changed the practice of just immersion into a thorough bathing in a river. In River Jordan, he shifted his offices to there and said that they should be bathed fully and they should be submerged. That is why you read about Philippine and a Abyssinian eunuch, being given baptisma in Jordan River, and they were properly, soaked and dipped repeatedly. So these are the things which the concept, the mention of Egypt brought to my mind. And here, instead of you asking me a question, I am asking you a question. Why did you ever try to understand why the practice of baptism was accepted by Paul but altered in its nature? Why was that?
I imagined it was so that it would be more of a visible sign of someone being converted to a new faith by making more of a demonstration of the fact that they were breaking their links with the past and joining the new in a public demonstration.
Yet he made other amendments as well. For instance, circumcision was associated inseparably with baptisma of a person who came from a different faith. And he was not only immersed in water or made to take bath, but also was circumcised. But St. Paul, did away with this practice as well, didn't he?
I think probably the link is there because, from my understanding, the very early Hebrews, Judaism was a missionary faith. But if anybody wanted to join, they had to make such a wholehearted adoption of Judaism that even males had to agree to circumcision.
That's right.
Because the Hebrews were tribes constantly defending themselves.
May I just continue that very slightly? And could it be that the Muslim world have been misguided into thinking of the ascension of Hazrat Isa alayhi salatu wasalam by the verse that I will raise you to me taken it literally rather than raising in status.
No, that is also the one verse which I have discussed repeatedly in so many other question answer sessions. So it came to my mind, but I thought then we will be diverting this debate to a channel from which will be no coming back.
Okay.
It's a long discussion.
Yes.
But when now that you have mentioned, I speak very briefly on this. The focal point of that verse, which is mentioned in relation to the ascent of Jesus, is Bal Rafahullahu ilayhi. He was not neither murdered nor crucified to the point of death. This is how we understand the message of the verse as preceding it. But it ends up in the conclusion, Bal Rafahullahu ilayhi. God raised him to himself. And the main point of strength which the non-Ahmadis believe they possess, is the word bal. They say what you thought is wrong. That did not happen. On the contrary, this is what happened. So they say that what you thought was that he was crucified. And the Holy Quran rejects this idea as, as absolutely, positively wrong, and presents a counter idea, which is he lifted him to the heaven. This makes sense, according to this they say.
Yeah.
But let's turn back to the verse and the context. The Holy Quran is speaking in the beginning of the Jewish claims that Jesus was a false prophet for two reasons. One, that his mother was unchaste, and he is the outcome of illegitimate relationship. Secondly, that we succeeded in killing him on the cross. The stress was on the killing, because it was said that whoever would hang by the tree and died would the fact would prove that he is a false claimant.
He would be accursed.
That's it. I'm coming to the word cursed. The ultimate message we draw from this discussion of the Quran is that on the one hand there were Jews who claimed that we proved that he was accursed by God. His birth was accursed and his death end was. The counter to this is not raising somebody to heaven. It's not the opposite of it. The opposite of it is that God blessed him, raised his status. He was not rejected by God and condemned to hell or any other position of God's wrath. He was rather even more loved by God by the sacrifices offered. So that is the spirit in which we understand the meaning of Bal Rafahullah ilayh. But that is not all. There is more to it. The question is, if he was raised to heaven physically, in a heaven of the dimensions known to us, then what should have Allah said? Allah should have said, but we did not make him die, first of all, but he is alive. The opposite of death is not ascension to heaven. We did not make him die, but he is alive. All through the discussion, the word life does not appear at all. It says what they claim is wrong. And they claimed that he was killed at their hands and he had an illegitimate birth. So the rejection is only of the claims of the Jews. Now, if the rejection was or were of the very concept of his death by any means, then God should have concluded, no, neither at their hand nor at the hands of the Roman Empire. He did not die. We did not permit anybody to kill him, or we did not even cause that death ourselves. This last bit is missing. On the contrary, this phrase is used, Bal Rafahullah ilayh, which I have already mentioned, is the opposite of the curse. It's a blessing to be close to God. Now, again, this verse cannot be interpreted in the literal sense at all. Because God doesn't say we lifted him to heavens, to the sky. God says we lifted him to ourselves.
Yes.
And where was God at that moment? And where was he not?
Yes.
Lifted him to ourselves. Was God not there at the moment when Jesus was being crucified? Closer to his jugular vein.
Yes.
Was there.
That's right. Yes.
So his body doesn't
Of
move.
course.
Body simply cannot move in the direction of God because everywhere.
There's al-
That is the point which you should,
Yes.
as a rebuttal to those who try to deceive you,
Yes. Thank
you
you.
should confront them with. You say, tell me, where is the bodily motion involved? Where is it mentioned? How can it be entertained?
Yes.
There is also the other famous verse in Surah Miriam where Jesus said, Peace be upon me, the day that I shall die and the day that I shall be raised up again.
Yes.
And the order of the verse clearly states that Jesus must die first before he's raised
Yes,
up.
that's right.
In
But
a
that is,
in a slightly different
I know, there's
context.
so many other verses, and thank you for reminding me of this. But they say, yes, here the ascension, it is not the ascension which is mentioned, it is the resurrection which is
Yes.
mentioned. And they say the resurrection would take place after Jesus descends to the earth, dies normally, and then after death he is resurrected. So they have a way of wriggling out of this, the clutch of this verse. But the ones which I generally present, there is absolutely no way they can escape. That is, Ma Muhammadun illa Rasul, qad khalat min qablihi rusul. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is no more than a prophet, and all prophets before him have passed away. And then, speaking of Jesus Christ in the same terms, the Holy Quran says, Mal Masihu ibn Maryam illa Rasul, qad khalat min qablihi rusul. Masih, son of Mary, was no more than a prophet, and all prophets before him have passed away. So how can Masih be left hanging in the middle, in nowhere, belonging to nowhere, neither to his past prophets nor to the past prophets from Rasulullah Sallam, the vantage point. He has to go. There's no way he can be left behind in the earth. They say, all right, we mean he went up to the heaven. I said, no, this is not what the verses say. The verses say, all prophets before him have passed away. How did they pass away?
They all died.
Died. All prophets before Prophet Muhammad passed away. And how did they pass away? Here the Holy Quran makes it crystal clear by saying, Afa'im mata or qutilan qalabtum ala aqabikum. So if also the Holy Prophet died, mata, no ascension is mentioned, or even murdered, what right have you got to turn on your heels? Because khala, the word khala, which means passed away, here has been translated by the Holy Quran itself. Just two possibilities, two connotations are mentioned, no third one. And as far as the Jesus' verse is concerned, the verse which speaks of Jesus, all prophets before him having died, the verse goes on. It doesn't end there. It says, وَأُمُّهُ صِدِّيقَةٌ. His mother was chaste. Kana or true or righteous. Either way it can be done. Kana yakulani tam. Both mother and son used to eat, no longer eat. So if mother was not alive, she was dead, and Jesus was alive somewhere in the heaven, why did he stop eating? Why was he exempted from those who stand in need of eating? That is how the whole
Yes.
story,
Yes.
the story is completed. The last point of escape they try to open for themselves lies in the direction that because he's in somewhere where he doesn't need to eat. We need to eat here because it is the situation of the earth, its atmosphere, etc., which makes it essential for us to eat for the sustenance of life. But first of all, this is just meaningless, totally, absolutely absurd. Food is needed because in metabolism, one is constantly losing energy. Even if you think, you lose energy. And a major part of loss of energy is related to the brain activity. So we'll accept him to be exempted from those who need food to survive, if you accept that his metabolism has come to a total dead end, to the extent that he has no brain activity left. And this is death, nothing but death. This is what we point out.
Yes, yes.
So instead of catching your air from the other side, why don't you catch it from the right, in the right direction, from the right side? He has to be dead if he stopped eating, because human body continues to metabolize, and it is catabolism which causes the loss of energy in so many ways and forms. So you can go into hibernation, of course, but still your heart will be beating, your lungs will be moving slowly, slowly, and your mind will still be active. So a loss of energy, if not completed within 2 3 years, let's extend it to 10 years in the case of Jesus. No more. Impossible. But the Holy Quran has its own answers. The Holy Quran in another verse says that we have not created any prophet with a body which can survive without eating. So not only he has to lose life, but he has also, according to their belief, lose his prophethood, because no prophet is given a body by God which can survive without eating. So when he was taken to somewhere, was he still a prophet or not?
Yes, yes.
He was, according to them. It is, kufr, denial of the fundamentals of faith. If you believe that a prophet once raised to the prophethood loses this office even for a moment, no way can they escape. These two verses stand guard over not the life of Jesus, death of Jesus.
Thank you, Azul.
A few days ago, we had Eid prayer, at which there was prayer followed by the sermon,
That's right.
which is opposite to Jummah prayer, where
Right.
the sermon comes before. What is the significance, if any, of
Yes.
that?
You see, in the beginning, Juma also was held like this. Juma prayer was said in the beginning and the sermon followed. But something happened which was most unwelcome, to say the least. Some Sahaba thought that prayer being over, the main feature of the Juma has come to an end. So if you go out and take leave from the sermon, still you would be considered as having attended the Juma. So it was reported, I mean, this is what I'm telling you from various reports contained in Hadith and history, that a caravan with trade commodities, etc., was reported to have arrived Medina. When Sahaba were performing Juma, the main prayer was over, but the sermon was going on. So those who thought that the sermon was not an essential part of Jummah prayer, they started leaving.
I see.
And this was not liked by God at all. He condemned it strongly in square terms. And from then on, it is reported by various scholars that the practice of Jummah prayer, having been said before the sermon, was altered. It was pushed back to the end part.
I see.
But the Eid, because no such thing ever happened, so there was no need. So in gatherings, this is very important. It has a message, in fact. The point is that if you wait too long for an address, for the prayer, it is possible that you stand in need of refreshing your wuzu
Yes.
or some other things of that sort.
Mm.
So it is better to have done with it. And that is the standing reason, in my opinion, not that report, which uh, creates the difference between a Jummah and Eid. In Jummah, you are sitting in a mosque, and out of the reverence to the mosque and the holiness of the place, it is impossible for those who sit to break their wuzu in any form or anything, or become too relaxed about it. On Eid days, people come from a much larger area
Yes.
and their needs are quite genuine. And if they sit too long because it is not a mosque, they can feel free to do whatever they please, thinking that then they would return to do the wuzu. And for such a large gathering, the arrangements were not there anyway.
Yes.
So it is forgetting about all the traditions which are reported, which are not definitely proved to be right, even from outside the domain of that,
Yeah.
we can understand a wisdom behind this.
Yes.
Jummah should be treated differently and Eid should be treated differently.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you. I have a question which was.
Yes, please.
I
I
have a
think
question-
the time which was lost to us, we are going to get it back from them.
I hope
inshallah.
so.
Willy-nilly.
Inshallah.
Huh?
Inshallah.
Right.
I have a question, which is a telephone question
Yes, please.
from Sahiba Mahmouda Malik of
Right.
Germany.
Sabiha,
Yes.
not Sahiba. It's written by somebody in a way.
Uh-huh.
It can be read Sahiba, it's Sabiha.
I see.
know. Yes.
Her question is, she says that the Christians believe in possession by demons. What does Islam say on this subject?
You see, as far as the possession by demon is concerned, this was the discussion which was about to enter during the last part of my death, when the time was over, the days of death were over. So it requires some lengthy discussion and also in-depth discussion, because some of the non-Muslim scholars have been mocking and laughing at the allegation they themselves raised against the Holy Prophet, that he was a believer in demons and so on. In what way he was and in what way Jesus Christ was not, this is going to be established by me and demonstrated at a forum which is more appropriate for such discussions.
I see. Thank you.
Any other telephonic question?
Well, I have
Okay.
another one, in fact.
Please.
This one is from I think it's Koala Shams.
Khola.
Khola.
Oh,
Shams
Muhyiddin
is-
Shams's daughter. Yes,
is the
from
way it's,
Islamabad. Yes.
and this is from Islamabad.
That's
It's her question is why did Christians and Jews believe that every child is born sinful, and what is our point of view on this?
The Jews didn't.
That's the question. Hazur.
Uh-huh. I don't think the Jews believed every child was born sinful.
I believe you're right.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
It was the Christians and particularly St. Paul. I don't see any mention of Jesus Christ towards this, pointing at this concept of the Christianity of today. It took birth in the mind of St. Paul, because he tried to philosophize his teachings to the Romans, and according to their own style of thinking, their philosophical background, he also tried to present Christianity in a different garb or in a different presentation. So that is how it came to be born. The Bible doesn't mention this crime ever having been transferred to the children. It is the New Testament in which, it is let me see. Um, the Bible does mention the fact, touches upon this. I'm remembering that part and I'll just speak on that. The Bible does mention that as a sign of crime committed by Adam, as a result or as a punishment of that crime, God so destined that from then on, every woman will bear child with pain and labor, and every man would earn his bread through hard labor. These are the two standing signs that are attributed to the sin of Adam, not to the sin having been transferred to the generations beyond. So I believe that this was made by St. Paul to be the main reason why he could claim that even in Judaic teachings there was a concept of sin continuing to be transferred from generation to the generation. But if he takes shelter in this, then he himself undoes the shelter, because the signs given in the Bible are that the sin will continue to be punished. Not the sin will be repeated. The sin will continue to be punished, and these will be the two signs of Allah's wrath. What happened at the birth of Jesus Christ, let's turn to that. Did Mary not suffer? And suffer very much. So she gave birth to a child in a state of sinfulness. If that is understood to be the sign of sin by St. Paul or anybody else. Right? And then after that, was this punishment taken off by Allah? By God?
Not at all.
Lifted from Christians or non-Christians? So if this is meant to be taken as referring to the continuation of sin in human race, then because the signs continue to exist, then nothing changed from the time of Jesus, which did not happen before. You understand the point?
Yes, of course.
So this concept is totally baseless and without foundation.
If Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, had died, as it was believed, taking the sins of the world
Yes.
with him, surely he would have taken those
That's what I'm
sins
referring
and
to.
women wouldn't suffer
This
in
is what I'm
childbirth.
referring to.
Yes.
There are 2 points. That is the birth of Jesus, which should have been sinless. If the signs of sin, as they are understood by St. Paul, the labor of the woman who goes for the childbirth, for delivery of a child, if that is a sign of continuation of sin, then the birth of Jesus was in sinful circumstances, and the death could perhaps wash away the sins, which did not.
Because if Jesus came to redeem sins,
Yes.
then that sin would not have been perpetuated on the rest of mankind.
That's right. But I'm talking of the signs from the biblical viewpoint. Now we are discussing not just entirely from the Christian viewpoint, we are discussing it from the viewpoint of St. Paul's understanding that this concept of sin has been taken from the New Old Testament, from the beginning of the story of Adam and Eve. What I'm saying is his interpretation is positively wrong. Because if they were the signs of sins continuing into future generations, then at the time of Jesus' birth and after Jesus' crucifixion, those signs should have been wiped out. Because sin didn't exist, so the signs had no right to be there. You understand this?
Thank you.
Yes, please.
My edition of the Holy Quran, with English translation and commentary, is read from right to left, as in Arabic
Yes.
and Urdu. But I've noticed that in later editions,
In right to left, yes, that's right.
yes, but I've noticed in later editions of the Holy Quran, it is read from left to right.
No,
Is
it's
there
not a
any?
question of earlier editions or later editions. It's only a question of personal options
I see.
by the author or by the management which is responsible for publication of the translations. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Salis, my predecessor, was of the strong view that it should be from right to left as the Arabic is written.
Yes.
I personally believe that the Holy Quran here is addressed, is presented for the benefit of those who read it from the left to right, read their languages from left to right. So they cannot read Arabic anyway. If large numbers among them could read Arabic, of course I would agree with this and I would also continue the same practice. But I stopped that practice because of my personal preference in view of this argument.
I see.
I thought because the English speaking and other readers who read from left to right, it is very difficult for them to change pages.
Yes.
And because they are not concerned with the Arabic text, anyway, it doesn't make any difference to us either. Right?
Thank you.
I also have a question about the Holy Quran.
Yes.
In Birmingham, a couple of months ago, where I live, there was a shop that was selling copies of the Holy Quran. Now, this shop were a firm of liquidators who bought books and material from collapsed businesses.
Correct.
And the original shop that sold these Holy Qurans had been destroyed by fire.
I see.
So the liquidators bought stocks of whatever stocks of material they had, including copies of the Holy Quran.
Right.
And they put these on sale.
Yes.
The shopkeeper was a non-Muslim, and so were his staff.
Right.
And some local Muslims found out about this,
Right.
and they were most upset, and they picketed the shop.
Yes.
And they gave the manager and his staff a very hard time, saying that it is not right for non-Muslims to touch or handle the Holy Quran. Now, is there any hadith or any saying in the Holy Quran that prohibits non-Muslims from touching the Holy Quran?
None whatsoever. And also, the practice of the Muslims themselves in the world gives a lie to this claim. Because the Holy Qurans are being translated and distributed in large numbers to non-Muslims by various Muslim sects. And translations are made available. The Quran is published by the non-Muslim publishing companies. Whether the translation is made by a Muslim or a non-Muslim, this is the established practice. How can they impose this condition on every shop that they should not sell the copy of the Holy Quran to a non-Muslim? And what means he would have at his disposal to determine a non-Muslim from a Muslim? If somebody walks in and says, I am a Muslim, give me. So either way it is wrong. It's not applicable. It's sheer nonsense. So for them to pick out this poor man for his picketing and this is very, very untrue. Had it been in Pakistan, of course it would be understandable because they do it only for our sake, to hit at us. You will never hear of any mullah, attacking the Christian centers there which possess the Qurans, with the purpose of condemning the Quran and for the purpose of criticizing, negatively, very strongly criticizing some verses of the Quran. And this Quran was published many a time by the Christians themselves. Now, never would you hear of any attempt by mullahs to go to the Christian houses or Christian centers searching for the Quran. But when it is found in the possession of an Ahmadi, what charges are pressed against him? Do you know that?
Well, he's a disbeliever and he's doing the Quran dishonour by even touching or looking at it.
No, it is taken to be an insult to the Holy Prophet. As such, the man must be condemned to death. So, if a Quran is discovered in the possession of an Ahmadi, this is the law of Islam. If the Quran is discovered in the possession of any Tom, Dick and Harry, an atheist, a Jew, a Christian, a Hindu, a Sikh, or anybody else, there's no problem. This is their Islam.
Mm. I had a funny experience when I first became an Ahmadi. When I officially joined our sect in 1983, I went to an ordinary local shop, a Pakistani shop, and they had some Jai Namaz in the windows, the prayer mats. And I went in and I said, I'd like to buy one, please. And he looked at me and he said, no, I'm not going to sell you one. And I said, well, why not, you know? And he said, they're not ordinary carpets, you know. And what are you going to do with it? I said, well, I'm going to pray with it. I'll pray on it. It's a Jai Namaz, it's a prayer mat. And he didn't believe me. And he went back into the shop and he spoke to the manager or the supervisor or the owner. And they came back and they said, we're not going to sell it to you because we don't believe you're a Muslim. And so I said to him, Islam is for everybody. It's not only for Pakistanis and Arabs. It's for everybody. And how can you tell what is inside somebody's heart? I've come into your shop asking you for a Jai Namaz to pray on it, and you've refused me. How do you know what's in my heart? And he had no answer to that. And I said, well, you know, you can keep your Jai Namaz. In that case, I prefer to buy one from a proper
and keep
source.
your Jai Namaz and the sect and all that goes with it.
Yes.
Very stupid, you know. This is they bring blemish to the face, the pure, beautiful face of Islam.
That's right, yes.
By their own misconceptions of realities of life.
I certainly wouldn't have become a Muslim if
you
it hadn't have been for Ahmadiyya.
That's why I'm quite sure. Yes.
Yeah.
I remember you meeting me before you had become an Ahmadi.
That's right.
And I could see that in you. You just wouldn't go for any nonsense.
No. Even now.
In views, of course, I do. A faith which satisfies the mind and heart both together and permanently. That is the faith for all those who think honestly and freely.
Yes.
None other is acceptable.
No.
And Ahmadiyya version of Islam just fits into the picture. This is the faith. I think we better take leave of them now. We have taken more than time lost, in fact. And because there are some other programs to run, so on behalf of all of us, I take leave of the audience and the viewers. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And you can turn it to them and they can also shake hands. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Wave them. And what about you? You didn't participate? Huh? Were you did you attend this for some participation, some reading of the Quran or something? No? You have done it already? But your mother told me that my children are coming to participate in your program, not only just for the sake of providing a guard, which is not needed anyway, but also for the sake of reciting some Quran and demonstrating to the world how beautifully they can read it. No? Okay, then take leave. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Have to save us time. That's all.